Malibu is with me today. She is modeling this super cute wrap skirt, which I am about to show you how to make. So here's the front of it. This top, by the way, is available as a tutorial on my YouTube channel. It's a free tutorial, and it looks actually pretty cute with this little wrap skirt. Here she's showing you the back of the wrap skirt. You can either tie it in the back or you could tie it on the side. And now I will tell you all the supplies you'll need for this super simple project. No pattern is required, and you just need some basic sewing skills. You can either sew this on your machine or you can sew it by hand. So you don't need a whole lot of supplies for this, but I'm going to go over them real quickly. You need some cotton fabric. Quilting cotton works well, or any kind of 100% cotton fabric is going to work for you. So you need your fabric. Obviously you're going to need scissors. I recommend a ruler. I like this little gauge ruler. This is handy. A fabric marker. I'm using fray check, but you could also just do a zigzag stitch on the edges of your fabric if you want. You need a little bit of ribbon. This is 1/8 inch or 3 millimeter width. It's white, so it's going to go well with my fabric that I've selected for this. Obviously some needle, thread, pins, the basics. You can do this by hand if you would like to. I will be using a machine for most of my stitching, however. Alright, so let's cut out our fabric pieces and get started. In addition to the supplies I just mentioned, another thing that I do recommend, though it's not 100% necessary, is to have an ironing board and an iron. I press as I stitch. Alright, so now we're going to cut out our two pieces. We need one piece that's 2.5 inches by 4 inches and one that's 4 by 4. The fabric I'm using here, you can see, actually has a top and a bottom to it. So, for example, if I wasn't careful and I just cut out the rectangle however I wanted and didn't really pay attention, which I actually did already, my bears would be going sideways, and I want them to go up and down. So there's a clear top and bottom to this, the orientation of the pattern on this fabric. So pay attention to that when you are cutting out your squares and your rectangle. All right, so I'm going to flip it over here. And using the gauge ruler, I'm going to mark a 2.5 inch spot right there using the gauge ruler. And this is where I'm going to use my marker, my fabric marker. And I'm going to mark 2.5 inches by 4 inches. So that's going to be the top right there. Hopefully, yeah, can you see that? Yeah. So there's my 2.5 inch mark right there. And then now we're going to go down to 4 inches. And I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut out that little rectangle. I'll be right back. Alright, I have my rectangle and my square cut out. This is 4 by 4. This is 2.5 by 4. And the next thing I want to do is finish off the edges, because if you don't, it can ravel. Alright, again, this is not something you must do, but it's something I recommend. It'll create a more finished look to your piece, and you won't have any fraying around your fabric on the edges over time. You can either use fray check, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to do that and then come back. If you don't want to use fray check, you can just do a zigzag stitch all the way around on your sewing machine. So let me add some fray check to these and let it dry, and I'll be right back. Alright, both pieces are cut out and I have fray checked the edges and they're dry. Then I'm going to put right sides together like this. And now I'm going to need, again, my little gauge ruler and my marking pen here. This is for fabric. And I am going to push this down to 1/2 inch, because we want to sew up this seam using 1/4 inch seam allowance, meaning from the edge to your seam would be 1/4 inch. But we're going to leave a little gaposis about here, because that's where the belt for the wrap of the skirt is going to go through. So again, measuring from the edge, 1/2 inch from the top, I'm going to put a little mark, little mark there. Then I'm going to measure another 1/2 inch and put a little mark there. Pin them together. And you can either hand stitch this or use a machine. I'm going to go on my machine and just do a straight stitch. But when I do my stitch, I'm going to stop at this point right here. So I'm going to do quarter of an inch inseam straight stitch up to here and stop. And of course, if you're new to sewing, remember you're always going to go on your sewing machine, go back stitch a little bit, front stitch a little bit every time at the beginning and end of a stitch. Pull it off the machine, start it right here at the next little spot right here that I marked. And again, stitch, stitch, back stitch, go all the way to the end, back stitch a little bit, and there you go. You're always going to back stitch a little bit at the beginning and the ending of any line of stitch that you make. It's a reinforcement. Right, so let me go to the machine and stitch, stop, stitch, and I'll be right back. Alrighty, my iron is hot enough, and I'm just going to press it real quickly here. You can see it's flattened out the seam. Again, now we have that little gaposis right out there, and that it looks really big right now, but the next step you'll see it's going to start making more sense. Here's the other side of it. So now I'm again using my iron, and again you could just fold this over and not iron it, but I think it's a good idea to iron it as I go. I'm going to fold this over a quarter of an inch and press down at the top. Like that. After I press, I'm just going to add a couple of pins. And I'm going to do this all the way around, a quarter of an inch. Boop. Press it. Add my pin. Alright, I have all my pins in place, and before I forget, if anybody's curious about where this particular fabric came from, it was sent to me from the Doll Apothecary on Etsy. She has lots of cute fabric over there, so a little plug for her. So anyway, I've got everything folded, pressed, pinned, and now the same thing I'm going to do is just another straight stitch, and I'm going to do it all the way around here. Okay, just press, pin, stitch, and we're almost done. Alright, I have stitched all the way around it. It's pressed, and I'm ready to attach my straps for the wrap skirt. Again, this is where the ribbon comes into play. You're going to need one piece of ribbon that's 5 inches and one that is 5.5 inches long. Right, now you're ready to attach the strap. You have, like I said, a 5-inch and then 5.5 inch strips of ribbon. You can either do this by hand. It's just as easy in some respects to just use a needle and thread and stitch it by hand, or your machine. And you're going to take the longer of the two, double check because one's 1/2 inch longer, right? So yeah, here's my longer one. So my longer piece of ribbon I'm going to add right about here on the shorter. So the longer piece of ribbon goes with the smaller side of your skirt, and then the shorter piece of ribbon goes with the larger side of your skirt, and that's because you're going to wrap around. It's not a huge deal if it's a little bit, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I have found that if you make one a little longer than the other, it is helpful. And basically just stitch it right here in this one spot, either by hand or machine. Right, I've stitched both my straps on. I also added a little bit of fray check right there and right there. I'm going to let it dry. I did that because ribbon does fray. The ends of a ribbon will fray over time, and this will kind of help it from stop it from fraying. And you don't want it to fray here because it could come apart at some point, like down the road. All right, so basically though, it's done, and like I said, here is the little hole that the strap is going to go in. Once we put it on a doll, you can actually wrap it that way. The strap fits in through there. Here it is without a doll in it. I'm still waiting for my fray check to dry, but you can see it without a doll in it. And I will be right back once this dries and show you it on a dolly. Right, two of my little dolly models are showing you two views of it. Here's the back of the skirt like I showed you at the beginning of the video. Here's the front of the skirt. Here is the actual skirt I just finished making for you. Malibu is wearing it here with the pineapple print, and we got Sanibel wearing the new skirt. This is also the same exact top. This one I just made straps for the top versus doing it halter style. It is this very same top that I mentioned at the beginning of this video. I do have the tutorial on my YouTube channel. Her earrings are made by Tapping Flamingo. They're little, their little bucket with sand and, you know, for the beach. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of this in the comments. If you have questions, I'll do my best to answer them. And yeah, I wish you success with this super simple sewing project for your Blythe dolls.